Thanks so much. Joining us now to discuss Democratic Senator Tim Kaine of the great Commonwealth of Virginia. Senator, let's start with the rail lines strike. Rail line companies are having record profits. Union Pacific and BNSF are up 16%, Norfolk Southern up 48%. And the workers here, they're fighting for pretty basic stuff, paid sick leave. Is this plan, which would force these employees to work, really the best way to go about this?
Well, Jake, paid sick leave is a very reasonable request, but it's also the case that the deal that was negotiated and then mediated is a significant improvement in wages and other working conditions for rail workers. They deserved improvement and they got it. Is it good enough? Most of the union leadership felt that it was, and many of the unions in votes of their membership felt that it was. As you know, there are multiple railroad unions, and some of the membership have not been supportive. But as a general matter, this deal that's been negotiated is a significant improvement in wages and working conditions for rail workers.
But it's still the case that the Biden administration is forcing workers to take a deal that would not allow them paid sick leave, which is something that I have, something you have, something my crew in here has, and it seems like something basic for any American worker.
Why in the negotiation other concessions to workers were granted and this one was not, I don't yet know. The president last night suggested Congress needs to vote on this. There's a statutory proceeding that enables us to have a vote on this. It will be our job to vote. And I'm looking forward to discussions both with railroads and also unions before I cast the vote. I understand what President Biden wants us to do. We do need to avert the strike. Before I cast a vote, I'm going to be hearing from both unions and the rail companies and asking the kinds of questions that you suggested. I haven't decided how I'm going to vote on this yet. I'll have those conversations first. But the nation does need to avert a rail strike.
Sure, nobody disagrees with that. But I guess the bigger question here is something that Bill Clinton's Labor Secretary Robert Reich tweeted earlier, which is, quote, "Is there a better definition of corporate greed than a Warren Buffett-owned railway refusing to provide workers with sick leave, despite the company reporting a net income of nearly $6 billion. I mean, is Secretary Reich wrong?
Well, again, that's a hell of a good tweet. But the Secretary doesn't put in that all the benefits for workers that were in the bill. Remember, there was a deadline in September that we thought we had averted with the deal, and that deal was a significant improvement in working conditions for workers that many of the unions support. Again, not all the unions do. How the status quo has changed from September to now, have they made additional progress in finding more concessions to workers? Have they gone backwards? Again, this is what we'll all be digging into before we cast a vote on the president's request.
Let's change subjects for a second here, because as you know, the Senate is voting soon on a bill that would provide some protections for same-sex marriages and interracial marriages. It does not go as far as is the current law under the U.S. Supreme Court, Obergefell and Loving decisions. It doesn't actually guarantee same-sex couples the right to get married in every state. It only forces states to recognize legal marriages from other states. What do you say to critics who argue this does not go nearly far enough?
I'd argue that they're right, but we need to do this right now, and then we can start looking for the next victory. This bill, I'm a co-sponsor of it and proud to be a co-sponsor. The Respect for Marriage Act, it would repeal the Defense of Marriage Act from the 1990s, and it would force every state, whatever their own marriage laws, it would force every state to recognize both interracial and same-sex marriages. And that means the millions of couples who that applies to will be able to move anywhere in the United States, any zip code in this country, and their marriage has to be given the same respect that any other marriage would be. That is a huge advance. After Obergefell, we wouldn't have thought we would have needed this, but the Dobbs decision this summer made plain that this Republican hand-picked Supreme Court will not only go after reproductive rights, it's likely to go after marriage equality. And so by doing this, we will force states to recognize lawful marriages from other states, which they should do so anyway under the 14th Amendment, grant of privileges and immunities and equal protection. It will be one of the most important pieces of civil rights legislation that Congress has passed in decades. But you're right, it doesn't go far enough. So let's get this one done, and then we can try to go farther.
And what do you say to the good citizens of Virginia, which you represent, who are religious conservatives and are worried that this legislation will force them to violate their religious beliefs?
I will say that they're wrong, and if people are telling them that, they're affirmatively misleading them. This bill has conscience protection, so no religion is required to officiate same-sex marriages. Look, my Catholic Church, as a doctrinal matter, doesn't believe in divorce, but it doesn't insist that Virginia not have a divorce law. It just has its own rules about whether divorces will be recognized or not. The same principle will hold for performing marriages. Churches will not have to perform marriages that are at odds with their doctrine, but they can't block others from getting married under the civil laws of the state. In fact, allowing a church to dictate what the laws of the state would be a gross violation of the First Amendment's free exercise and establishment clauses.
Before we go, I do want to take a moment to remember your longtime friend, Congressman Donald McEachin, who passed away yesterday. How do you hope people remember him?
Jake, I met Donald when he was 24 years old, and I was a year or so older, and I was at a celebration of his wedding to Colette, who is also a dear friend, and he died after a very courageous battle with cancer that lasted about 10 years. I never once heard Donald complain or be without a smile on his face, even as he was visibly weakening because of cancer. So I hope folks will remember him as a gentle giant, as a climate champion, as a champion for the underdogs, and a wonderful husband, father, and devoted friend.
Yeah, may his memory be a blessing, sir. Thank you so much,
Jake.
Democratic Senator
Absolutely.
Tim Kaine of Virginia.